Do you hear that, Sid? There's a man in the woods.
It is absolutely no secret that I am a huge Deltarune fan, or Undertale fan, or whatever. I mean, it's kind of plain to see on my name, J Sans. Due to that, I've been very involved in the community centered around Deltarune and the content that comes out of it. And as you may know, Deltarune Chapter 5 was unveiled in the most recent Nintendo Direct with a release date of June 24th. As such, a fervor has been reignited in that fandom, and a lot of the content is kind of bubbling back to the surface. And a lot of that content is horror content. Now, from a kind of base, plain view of Deltarune on a regular-ish playthrough, you may not realize the kind of sinister subtext that exists within its world. The most you might immediately realize is obviously Chris's somewhat mysterious and nefarious actions, the disappearance of Des, and the roaring night. Although a lot of these things are worrying, they don't immediately scream horror. But when you dig just a bit deeper, cracks begin to show. An Easter egg of some kind routinely keeps appearing. A friend. In Chapter 2, we're introduced to Battington, a character who used to be a successful businessman, but completely lost his mind. One thing you might notice is his sunglasses have the same color pattern as Friend's eyes. Speaking of Battington, there is so much horror-related content involving him, as well as content involving Snowgrave, and both are impeccable, and the art related to them is amazing. But I kind of wanted to hone in specifically on the unsettling underlying mystery of Deltarune, the conspiracy of it almost. In Chapter 3, if you get S rank, you get access to a series of minigames. All of them are really haunting and just spooky. A sense of dread and loneliness kind of overwhelm you while you play. After you beat all the levels, you get to fight the final boss. And when you know it, that final boss summons friends. And coincidentally enough, this boss gives you the tool that you need to not instantly die to the roaring night. Then there's Mike, who's kind of a mysterious figure in the whole of Deltarune. Hell, the game itself makes fun of this mystery. But a lot of speculation leads to the thought that maybe Mike is a friend. Now, rightfully so, you may be wondering where the hell I'm going with this. Truth is, a lot of what we know about Friend is fan speculation. It's guesswork. Truly, Friend could be a red herring. He could mean nothing at all. But he could also be a puppet master, an unseen force. Potentially the answer to some of Deltarune's biggest mysteries. But you may be wondering, what are those mysteries? Some of them have him more directly connected, like who is Gaster? Who is the Roaring Knight? What's the deal with the black shards? But one of them, he doesn't technically have any relation at all, but yet still, he's brought up. That question being, what happened to December Holiday? As of now, June 19th, that question remains unanswered. We really don't know much about Des. We know they were a musician, that much should be obvious by their guitar and some statements from Tenna. We know that Chris and Asriel had some connection to her, with her and Asriel likely being close friends or possibly more. And we also know that she's gone. For lack of a better term, her presence is simply missing. There is an implication that something happened to her due to some characters' reactions to her name and how some of her items were treated. From this, multiple different fan theories arose. One claiming that Des is the Knight, implied by the Knight's antlers. One theory claims that she's scattered, mixed between the worlds of Deltarune and the game's files. But one theory claims that maybe a friend was involved. Okay, no more vagueness and info dumping. I promise there is a reason I've been explaining all this. Much of the horror content that centers around Deltarune involves Des and Friend, also Chris because they're the main character, but you know, either together or separate. So I wanted to give a bit of backdrop on this topic and maybe a bit of insight, because when it comes to this kind of horror content, I absolutely love it. I love the horror of these interpretations, of these pieces of art, of these comics, of these animations, of just whatever. I find it often hard for something to really unsettle me, at least in a way that doesn't rely on shock value. But somehow, some way, these pieces of art have managed to achieve just that. And it got me thinking, what other horror interpretations of media I enjoy have affected me in unique ways? And that led me to making this video. What am I going to be talking about exactly though? Well, anything from analog horror to HORRORTALE to Fnaf VHS tapes. I have a lot to say, but I want to make it something interesting to watch. Speaking of watching in eyeballs though, Undertale is a beautiful game. A beautiful game with a beautiful story. A story of a world that's struggling yet manages to shine through still. Despite how much of Undertale's story is goofy, heartfelt, and in such a nice game with nice characters, you die. You die quite a bit. You're killed by these same nice characters. Now, in some instances you aren't actually killed, like with Papyrus who just captures you, but other characters just straight up kill you and send you back to the lobby. But these characters don't do it because they're evil, mostly, or because they want to hurt you. They have their reasoning and believe it's better for everyone. Hypothetically though, what if you took these characters and their capacity for violence and took them to their natural extreme? Well, then you're left with HORRORTALE. Now, before we get into this topic at all, I do not support the creator, and you should not support the creator. They are a weirdo. That aside, though, I think HORRORTALE is honestly one of the best horror interpretations of a series I've seen at all. Certainly one of the best Undertale they use, that's for damn sure. Sorry, Underfell. Why, you may ask? Well, my reasoning comes down to two things. Characterization and brutality. There is a lot of violence in HORRORTALE. The main character, Eliza, dies quite a bit, but none of the deaths feel random or purely for shock value. There's intrinsic reasoning behind each one, whether to show the danger of a situation or to further a character's motives. I think the best way to show how HORRORTALE does its characters is to go through a couple of examples. Aside from, obviously, Flowey, Toriel is the first person Eliza meets. In the original game, Toriel's isolation and fear for the human are emphasized pretty well. I mean, there's only a singular exit, one we know for sure she's never left through. Canonically, HORRORTALE takes place after the events of the neutral route, so we know that Toriel has not only been alone in here for years, but she's also had to listen through that door as the underground devolved into total madness. We can tell as much considering we know her and Sans still have an active connection. So, naturally, in the story of HORRORTALE, Toriel's possessiveness and paranoia are cranked up to the max. Not only does she know the horrors that await Eliza and Snowden, she also knows the potential consequences of what could happen should Undyne get that final human soul, and so she acts absolutely deranged in an attempt to stop Eliza from leaving. Yet, somehow, in her natural motherly nature, she still does let Eliza go. Although she begs her not to leave and later tells Sans to kill her, she still lets her go. Even in the worst of the worst situations like HORRORTALE, somehow the character's true nature still shines through. I'll Alphys isn't really directly present in HORRORTALE. She's kind of lobotomized before the story even starts, so all the characterization we have for her is done through flashbacks. But even then, these flashbacks are great examples of how well and faithfully HORRORTALE does its characters. In the original game, Alphys is portrayed as a kind of dorky, somewhat pathetic scientist, but as it goes on, we kind of learn about her darker side. We learn that she was basically putting the player in harm's way just so that she could save them, directly lying to us. We also learn about the True Lab, a place where Alphys did experiments on monsters involving determination. When those monsters began to mutate, rather than taking accountability, she hid them away. Now, in the true pacifist route, we see her come to terms with her mistakes and try to be better. But remember, this story doesn't take place after that route. The Alphys we see in HORRORTALE is one that hasn't really grown or changed yet. She still has all her negative qualities, now more so amplified by the crisis with the core. As the crisis unfolds in the backstory, we see Alphys as she keeps her mouth shut, but likely knowing something she refuses to say, until the very last moment. She suggests a plan that involves hurting someone, a plan to hurt one of her own friends. But it seemed like the only way out, right? No, actually. True to her nature in Undertale, we learned that Alphys was actually hiding something else. Alphys knew of a possible other way to solve the crisis, a possible alternative that could have saved lives, but rather than tell anyone, or even suggest it to Undyne, she just kept her mouth shut, and only considered the worst case scenario. And although maybe she was right that Sans' plan for the core was too risky, her lying, scheming, and backstabbing ended up all for nothing. The core is destroyed by Sans, the underground never ends up receiving the power anyway, and just to further cement her failure, Sans lobotomizes Alphys, making her unable to possibly fix the damage. I think HORRORTALE's interpretation of Alphys does a great job at showing how her negative traits hurt everyone around her, and how a lot of the development she never received in the pacifist route affected her decision making in the story. But since I mentioned him already, I guess we should talk about him now. Now, just to get this out of the way before we really begin, my goat is not a fucking pedo! My goat is not a fucking groomer! Stop projecting your sick, twisted fantasies onto my goat! Moving past that, Sans is an enigma of a character. It's really hard to pinpoint him down. A lot of people choose to read him as a lazy, slacking bum who just doesn't care, treats everything like a joke. But a lot of people also read him as an intently aware man who knows the futility of his circumstances, who knows way more than he lets on, and lets that bring him despair. Being perfectly honest, he's kind of a mix of both. Sure, to some extent he seemingly doesn't care. In a lot of neutral routes, he doesn't actively stop the player or anything, or even really criticize them that much. Only when you decide to go for a full genocide does he choose to do anything substantial. But also, to some extent, he does care. He's notably very observant of you, and the circumstances around him no matter the playthrough, basically taking up the role of the judge. He's always watching the player, and always keeping track of what they do, all so he can give his final verdict. He is also notably very fond of his brother, speaking very highly of him whenever he gets the chance, and clearly valuing him a lot. Probably not like holding his scarf in the snow crying, but he definitely had some form of harsh emotional reaction to his death. Okay, enough explaining how Sans is in the original game. How is he in HORRORTALE? Well, given the circumstances, I think the adaptation of Sans is pretty good. A lot of his original personality is still intact. He still cares a lot about his brother, and a lot of that care has further extended to the rest of the town. As the crisis unfolded, he had to kind of step up as a leader. But also, his characterization is warped. He's more vindictive, cruel. He now gleefully participates in the same violence he criticized the player for, even enacting an entire policy in Snowden where any human that falls down will be killed and eaten. There are a couple of reasons for this in the lore. 1, to keep the people of Snowdin from starving after he destroyed the core, 2, to prevent Undyne from breaking the barrier and starting a race war, and, in my opinion, just as an insult to her after what she did to him. Sans was always kind of written as a skeptical character to begin with, at least of the human. The events of HORRORTALE end up amplifying this tenfold, both due to Frisk leaving the underground to wallow, but also due to the betrayal he faced at the hands of Undyne and Alphys, betrayal at the hands of people he tried to help. This distrust especially manifests towards Eliza. He's constantly criticizing her, verbally and physically attacking her. He can tell she has some kind of power, but he doesn't quite know what. It kind of reaches a boiling point when Sans, who's been starving for years, sees Eliza, half-baked, and on 2 separate occasions, tries to eat her. Now, the first time is interrupted by Papyrus. The second time, though, they come face to face with no one between them. The conclusion is seemingly inevitable of what Sans will do, something he said he'd do to the player a long time ago. But, in this singular moment, something makes Sans falter. Eliza offers him something to eat. After everything Sans had put her through, she still chose to show him kindness. Granted, it's a form of kindness that prevents her from getting eaten, but kindness nonetheless. Sans, harkening back to his older days, fulfills the role of the judge and lets her go. Now, there is a lot more I could say on Sans. The whole thing with his backstory, all the stuff with his eye, but I'd rather not just tell you the story. I'm just giving you a brief rundown here. But, speaking of that, I do want to give my general opinions and talk a bit about the creator of this story. Now, if you couldn't tell, I like HORRORTALE. I like it a lot. But is it perfect? No. The biggest issue for me is definitely the dialogue at certain sections, like Sans in this scene.
Well, Your Majesty, don't know how you did it, but you did. You've officially succeeded at pissing me off.
Like, Sans, that was not it. Sit down, bro. Sit down. Other than that, though, I really don't have anything to say. Maybe the power system is a bit weird, but, like, could you really blame them? We didn't know shit then, and we don't know shit now. I would say I have pretty high opinions of the series overall. Now, the creator, not so much. I'm gonna be honest, I don't really know much about Sour Apple beyond their involvement with HORRORTALE and obviously the controversy they got into. That controversy being them drawing art of Eliza aged up in not safe for work situations with Sans. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty weird. Now, like, it's technically not illegal on some Nathaniel Bandy shit, but like, it's just weird to age up a child character specifically for NSFW and then have them be sexually involved with a character that knew them when they were a child. That's just weird. But as weird as that is, these were commissions, and you know, maybe they didn't realize, like, maybe they didn't know any better. They made a mistake. We're all human, we make mistakes, so maybe if they just took accountability, admitted that it was wrong, maybe, you know, maybe it could be. Drew one more pic of a grown-up Eliza enjoying her young adult life, tanning her gorgeous 18 and above self on a fantasy beach after uncanonically surviving HORRORTALE many, many years ago for my patrons.
Let's be real, you don't deserve an apology for being groomed.
The most interesting thing about this tweet is that, like, HORRORTALE still happened, so Sans is technically grooming her. Like, did they just not see the problem with that? They just don't think there's anything wrong with that? But even though I do think the creator is weird and I don't support them, I still think HORRORTALE is a really good story, and I personally really enjoy reading it. And I don't think they're evil or anything. I don't think they're anywhere near the same level as someone like Dollsmick or Junkie. I don't think they're, like, actually dangerous. But I still don't support them. In summary, HORRORTALE is peaked, Sour Apple really needs to be better, and yeah, Nathaniel Bandy.
If I were into underage video game characters or avatars, anything, what I'm trying to say is characters that don't exist in real life, you are allowed to find them sexually attractive if they are underage.
Oh, this is my chance to catch you by surprise. Have at me! Ah, my fucking knee! Fuck!
Michael! Don't leave me here!
Was the Dead by Daylight montage necessary? Yeah, it was. As you might have been able to tell, what we're going to be talking about now is Fnaf fan horror, more specifically a pretty infamous VHS series. Now, some of you may be saying,
but Five Nights at Freddy's is a horror series. Does that really even count?
Yeah, it does, and if you disagree with me, you can go fuck yourself and then go die. To follow that up, though, you may also be asking,
there's so many different types of unique FNAF fan media. Why are you only talking about one?
Well, because I feel like being negative and Dormatabus is off the table. Tim Duffy Digital Denson already took it, the thieving bastard. Okay, minor side tangent. You know that video I just mentioned about Pappo talking about Dormatabus? Well, he took this illustrious opportunity to defend a pedophile.
Judge this game as the manifesto of a pedophile, when the evidence itself is lackluster.
That was really bad.
He tries to be like, oh guys, the accusations, they aren't proven, but they very much were proven, and proven a very, very long time ago. And then he also tries to say, guys, you gotta separate the art from the artist. When the art very clearly includes the fantasies of the artist. Okay, bro. I'm gonna talk about Pappo more later in the Sonic section, but come on, Densonator, do better, man. To be fair, not much on Dormatabus could be said that hasn't already been said, but ironically enough, I really haven't heard that much about the Twelveman tapes. You know, I've heard people mention them and something really bad that happened in them, but no one's really talked about them as like a critical thing. But I'm sure whatever's attached to the series can't be that bad. William Afton deep frying a baby. Had I not known about this series beforehand, I would have thought this was from like a parody or something making fun of how bad FNAF fans are at writing and how 90% of the story is headcanon. They wouldn't be wrong. But no, this is something he actually does in the Twelveman tapes. True to the LARPer nature of most FNAF fans though, many of the people who claim to hate or love this series haven't actually seen it. So I took it upon myself to sit my fat chud ass down and watch all of it. And honestly, I'm about to say something crazy. I'm about to say something absolutely insane in the membrane. I don't think William Afton deep frying a baby is that out of character. Now, is it a crazy thing to do? Absolutely. And do I have issues with it? Yeah. But I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. I mean, this dude killed children. I don't think it's that much of a stretch. And the scene it happens in, I think is actually quite tastefully done. You have the sound of the baby crying coincided with the animatronics shaking in what seems to be rage. I actually really like this scene. But compared to the rest of the series, I don't really enjoy it as much. If I had to describe the 12-man tapes, I'd say it feels like a whole lot of talking about Afton. William Afton is always a hard character to write about, since the days he was named Vincent. So I'm not going to give 12-men any flack for not sticking to the source material, because the source material is vague as shit and really open for interpretation. Take the Squimpus Mcgrimpus tapes, for example. Oh, what the fuck? This version of William takes a lot of liberties from the source material, and he works great. In just one scene, he's turned from a kind of mysterious figure into a genuinely great and compelling antagonist. Now, how does 12-man do it? Not great. Now, just to make it perfectly clear, this is not the worst interpretation of Purple Guy I've seen. Not even fucking close. But I just don't really like him. He doesn't really feel like much of a character to me. Sure, we know the things he's done, and we know some of the things that's happened to him, but we don't really know anything else. It's kind of hard to piece together an actual character out of what we have. He ends up feeling more like a list of horrible things in a purple security guard suit rather than an actual character. I wouldn't really complain if he wasn't like the entire bedrock of the series. The animatronics are like Gangle in the Amazing Digital Circus. They kind of get sidelined for most of the series outside of like one episode. And like, I'm a bit intrigued, but I'm gonna be honest, the more I listened, the less I cared. Because it just felt like,
Well, man, I'm so evil. I fucking deep fry babies. I put worms in food, man. I'm just a fucking worm.
and not much else beyond that. The very limited screen time Afton actually does have doesn't help either. I know comparison is the thief of joy, but this series makes multiple references to the Walten files, so I'm gonna kind of use it as an example. We learn a lot about Felix Kraken in the first 3 episodes of the Walten files. We learn about his friendship with Jack Walten. We learn about how his marriage fell apart. We learn that he made a promise to his dear friend. We learn that he drank that night. We learn who died. We learn that he did everything in his power to avoid the consequences. We learn that this hurts everyone around him and leads to the events of the Walten files. And we learn that he knows. He knows full well, and it doesn't deter him. We learn that he's content to sit in that sorrow and guilt and drown it, one gulp at a time.
And we know this because we are shown it, because we are told it.
I'll give the Twelveman tape some leeway because the Walten files did have more time to do what it wanted to do. It had about 80 minutes counting only the main 3 episodes and not counting the teaser, while the Walten files only counting up to Bunny Farm had 88 minutes. So in all, Walten files did have 8 minutes over it. But again, it's not like the series is strapped for screen time. There's plenty that could be cut down or cut out. This series does have a lot of dead air. But I think even with the limited screen time William has, I think he could have been compelling. I think if they just characterized him more, he could have been a great antagonist. The screen time thing is more so an issue for another character. The issue comes in with just how little we understand or know William with the screen time we're given. Let's take the phone call scene with his friend Carl, for example. Analyzing this scene, what do we really get from it about William? We can tell that he's angry, but we can't really infer anything beyond that. Carl's reaction doesn't really tell us this is a common thing. We can obviously infer that he's a weasel, but considering he killed children, I feel like that was kind of obvious. It does seem like he's meant to be coming off as kind of cunning and methodical, but it doesn't really work when in the series he does kind of stupid and sloppy things. Things that he only gets away with because the characters around him are stupid. Things we have of William on this front don't really present a very interesting or compelling character. But personality isn't everything, especially with villains. Screen presence can work wonders in making a character compelling and intriguing. Nemesis doesn't really have any personality, but his screen presence and threat make him a great antagonist. The issue here is that William doesn't have any screen presence at all. He really doesn't have any physical presence in the series. The only thing we really get of him is his voice and a picture. And this leads to him feeling like a very unintimidating character despite his crimes. The baby deep frying scene, as much as I like it, I think the lack of William's presence in it kind of ends up severely diminishing him as a character. He's so disconnected from his crimes that he really doesn't feel like a threat at all. He feels less like a monster and more like a guy that apparently killed children. Yes, I'm essentially saying William Afton has no aura. This is such an easy fix too, because all you would need to do is show us William. Show us him taking the baby to the deep fryer and after the fact. Obviously, don't show him deep frying a baby. I'm not insane. Show him talking to Carl. Give us his body language. Give us an idea of him. There's an entire scene of Carl going to destroy evidence. And the entire time, I just thought, why not have this be William? I just think there's a lot they could have done to have William be either a more interesting character or a more threatening figure. And I think this extends to his victims as well. Often one of the best ways to really show a killer is to characterize their victims and show the consequences of their actions. The more we understand the victim's perspective and pain in all this, the more it makes us despise and fear the perpetrator. The problem with the victims in the 12-man tapes is, although their characterization is actually pretty decent, we get a pretty good idea of what they're feeling like as a mass. The problem is, outside of one episode, the victims and animatronics don't really do anything. Like, they'll be mentioned and they'll appear, but they don't really affect anything. Like, they'll have occasional Gaster pop-ups, and in the second video, they end up killing a guy, but that's it. The guy they killed wasn't really even important. The main point I'm trying to get is that I think it would make William a much more interesting antagonist if they made his victims more important. Also, man, this is a Five Nights at Freddy's series. Dude, you have animatronics. Use them. Since this is a horror series, I am going to give my opinion on the horror aspect of it. That opinion being that, for the most part, the scares we have are pretty good. Some of the pop-ups did get me, and I think the atmosphere is pretty good, but it doesn't really lead to anything, so I don't know. There just isn't a ton of scary stuff or horror in this series, which is perfectly fine, but I feel like it might have made up for some of the shortcomings the story had, but I don't know. I do have two notes. One, on the baby deep frying scene. I think that scene is great, but I think it being so late in the series kind of diminishes its actual impact. By this point, we've already had William put literal bioweapons in pizza. It's not really that shocking. When it comes to disturbing horror, you either need to go big or take the audience by surprise, and this scene doesn't really do either. But I still like it, and I still think it's a great scene. Now, the scene with victim number 5... Now, listen, all respect to the voice actor in this scene. He is giving it his all, but it is so obvious he is interacting with an MP3 file. Now, there is also a stock crying sound effect in the deep frying baby scene, but for the most part that scene was silent, so it wasn't really noticeable. When you put actual voice acting over a very obvious stock sound effect on repeat, it's kind of hard to take seriously. I don't want to resort to just making fun of this series and stuff like that because I genuinely respect the artistry and dedication that was put into it, but this scene is just a bit of an immersion break for me. And I think it also has a pretty easy fix. Just show the operation with the child. All the damage is internal, so there wouldn't be any gore, and you wouldn't need really a high detail model because the camera here is pretty bad. I think it really could have sold it better, but just as it is now, it's kind of hard to take seriously. Also, these agents are really stupid. I'll say it for the third time. Had me mad as fuck. Now, there are some other things I could say, like, why is William deep frying a baby? Why is he putting worms in food? Why is Carl recording himself committing a crime? But this series does have a part 2 plan, so I'm gonna kind of give some leeway and assume some of these things may be explained in part 2. Now, even despite how much I criticize the story and characters, this series is still incredibly well made. The animation is top notch, and the voice actors are giving it their all. If it sounds interesting to you, I would recommend watching it. I just didn't personally enjoy it and had quite a lot to say. If 12man's watching this, just know that I respect you and I respect your work. I just had a couple issues. One thing I'll say about these tapes though is I think they're kind of a byproduct of something. Something that's kind of happened over the past couple of years. Something you yourself might have noticed. The fan horror, analog horror, digital horror, whatever horror industrial complex. Fan horror has always been important to internet culture. I'm sure plenty of you remember when there were like a million different horror MLP stories. But it feels like in recent years, as the internet has grown, the fan horror scene has just absolutely exploded. Almost every series you can think of has some form of fan horror. Splatoon has a horror series. One Piece has a horror series. The Annoying Orange definitely has a horror series. I'm gonna keep it so real. Actually going in depth for this video had me floored. I mean, just like... I'm gonna be honest. If you doubled this video's runtime, it would not even be close to enough time to give every single story, game, and video on this exact subject its due diligence. Let's see how well I can do it in a solid 5 whole minutes. Analog horror and digital horror are a pretty ranging genre. Makes sense considering they're probably the easiest thing here to make aside from one very specific thing. For every Duffy, Denson, Circus, and Man in the Suit, you've got This is the kind of thing you gotta judge on a case-by-case basis, because it's pretty unfair to compare something with genuine love and passion in it, like SM4 Classified, to just genuine AI slop. There are genuinely so many creators in this space that finding one I'd call the best is hard, but honestly, if you have any experience here, you probably know who I'm about to bring up. Vibing Leaf. Oh yeah, you know what time it is. I'm not even gonna bother introducing them because if you're watching this video, you know who Vibing Leaf is. You've definitely seen a video of theirs before. Red Mist Retake, The Grievening, Kung Fu Panda's Worst Villain, the list goes on. To be perfectly honest, I don't really have much to say here. They just make really good horror videos. They stay accurate to the characters and source material while still delivering a scary product. They took The Grievening's boring plot and added a whole ass Wendigo to it. I mean, like, fucking mastermind, man, fucking genius. This dude's been making horror content since damn near the start of COVID, and it's still high quality. Okay, no more glazing. I just thought if I was gonna talk about fan horror, I had to bring this guy up. Time to get back to real scary shit. Like My Little Pony.
Porn relating to ponies?
Seemingly kind of a hyper-specific choice, but it's something so common that I felt like it deserved its own category. You'd be most likely to see something like this from TikTok. Unlike analog and digital horror, I feel like this genre of content is just naturally very well made. People who make stuff like this make it because they genuinely like and care about the series, and it shows. Is it perfect? No, I'm gonna be honest, when it comes to the actual scares and stuff like that, it is kinda samey, but still, I fuck with this style heavy. Also, for all the TikTok shit I've shown, please pause and go check out the people that made these wonderful pieces of art. They are the GOATs. I'm gonna keep it real. 90% of my exposure to this genre is Fnaf fan games. But I have watched a few Toadbutt videos. They look pretty scary. Though they all low-key boiled down to the MatPat evil Mario theory. Even the ones where Mario isn't the villain somehow include Mario being evil. What the fuck, man? Dude, just fucking look at it. I don't even need to say anything. Just look at it, bro. This is kind of like the reverse infection at you, because this is the OG, this is the original fan horror, and it is 70% of the time straight bullshit, straight tomfoolery. You have some that are pretty okay, like Abandoned by Disney, that one's alright, and then you have others that are just absolutely insane and total garbage. Lost episode creepypastas are probably the best example of this. Squidward Suicide, The Grievening, the fucking Dead Bart creepypasta, bro, what is this shit? I'm making fun of it, but like, truthfully, I love this shit. I would much rather a horror story be really entertaining and bad, rather than just like, mid and boring. One thing you may have noticed though, that in all this talk of creepypastas and fan games and FNF mods, there's one character I haven't yet mentioned. Oh yeah, you know what time it is. It would honestly be downright foolish of me to make this video without mentioning Sonic.exe. Bars. To me, when I think of fan horror, I think of this fugly ass face. I think of him and the impact he had on the genre. A solid 40% of the horror fan games that exist are EXE games. Though, I've kind of messed up, because Sonic.exe is less of a him and more of a them. There are genuinely thousands of different variants of Sonic.exe. All cool, all unique, and all probably have a Friday Night Funkin' mod. But today, I'm mainly going to be talking about 5 of them. Also a secret bonus one, but you'll see that later. Let's first talk about the creepypasta that started it all, and the game that followed. Its importance as a trendsetter cannot be understated, inspiring not just all subsequent Sonic.exes, but also creating a standardized format for EXE games. 3 characters, all die one by one, I am God. With that being said, that is the only positive thing that could be said for this version of the character. The story itself is not scary. Bro, a plushie? The big jump scare of your story is a plushie? Not saying it can't work, shout out to my dude Tails doll, but I can't lie, this is silly as fuck. The original fan game isn't very good either. It's not the worst, it's a fine enough walking simulator, but I am just not scared by it at all. The I am God image is kind of scary, but that's just fan art. I think it's an interesting time capsule of how much internet horror has evolved, because if this fan game came out in 2026, it would be putting up Kyle Kuzma numbers. The game itself is the story sucks.
My final rating for this is a
Sexting 14-year-olds when you're 26.
out of 10.
X, or Lord X, is, to my knowledge, currently the most accepted official version of Sonic.exe, originating from a remake of the OG Sonic.exe game, Sonic 2011. Due to that, I'm going to be kind of looking at it in comparison to the original, and yeah, this is way better, no contest. It is still basically just a walking simulator, ignoring the extra stuff hidden in there, but that's perfectly fine. What makes a walking simulator is presentation, and this version of Sonic.exe has great presentation. One issue I have with a lot of .exes is that they don't really feel like Sonic. They feel more like a demon wearing a Sonic skin. But here I would argue that's a benefit. Sonic here feels wrong, he feels corrupted, possessed. The way he contorts in certain places really adds on to that fact. Though he sometimes does act like Sonic, like when he's taunting Knuckles. Is it perfect? Not necessarily. I'm not really a super big fan of the voice lines. Truthfully, that Kefka laugh is iconic for a reason, but nothing substantial. I'm gonna keep it so real though, I do not understand the lore at fucking all, and I don't think I will. Like, what do you mean this dude makes music? What's happening in Sonic.exe, bro? I hope y'all are ready for some insane dick riding. I don't know, man, I just really love this version of Sonic.exe. To my knowledge, he mainly originates from a Friday Night Funkin' mod by Springless Echoes. Shit, man, I don't care, he's Let's talk design, and in terms of design, Rewrite gets a straight 10 out of 10 from me. I love how odd he feels. He looks so similar to Sonic, but he's just slightly off in specific ways. His ears are more pointed, his quills are sharper, longer, his legs are bendier, making him much lankier than we're used to. His smile is constant. Even when he's seemingly upset or not happy, he's still smiling. His eyes are so wide, they take up almost all of his face, yet they're completely unchanging. The only emotion we get out of him are his pupils. Pupils that are rather big and long, like a cat, piercing right into the player. This version of Sonic is similar enough that we can identify him as Sonic, but also just different enough that he feels uneasy. His eyes and constant smile really sell it for me. It makes him feel so unnatural. Animation-wise, he's fantastic. He does obviously act like Sonic a decent bit, but it feels more like he's mimicking how Sonic should be, rather than how he is. Oftentimes his movements are really clunky, as if he isn't used to the body he has. This is especially exemplified when he quite literally contorts and stretches his body, as if the form of Sonic we see him in isn't him and just a cage for what's really inside. It's fantastic. Note, X also does this, but it works better for Rewrite because Rewrite is much more obviously trying to be Sonic. Story-wise, there really isn't too much, kind of the typical Sonic.exe story you would expect. Haunted game, people die, you know, the usual. But it feels more unique here, because it's played like an actual game, and not just some scary ROM hack. The iconic hide-and-seek segment seen in most EXE series is portrayed as like an actual minigame, with Sonic having to catch and find Tails. Granted, this changes whenever he kicks him into a river and he fucking drowns. Go! But still, it's unique and makes him feel even more uncomfortable. The fact that in a lot of ways he is so normal and so familiar, yet deep down is much, much different than we know, is rather disturbing. I'm dick riding super hard, but I just love this version of Sonic.exe, man. I also really like the redesigns for all the characters around him. They really match his aesthetic and indirectly work to make him feel more imposing, highlighting how terrified they are of him. Enough dick riding though. Please support Springless Echoes and let's get on. The first and only analog horror on this list. Sorry, not enough time. Having watched the whole thing through though, I think it's pretty decent. The pacing is fine, bit slow at times, but nothing One Piece level. The art is pretty good. Appreciate the series for having actual art and animation. It can really shine at certain segments. The story is also pretty interesting. For a rundown, basically, Sarah went to a party with her friends, Sarah dies, they throw her body in a lake, Sarah possesses Sonic in a game, she tracks down and kills the 3 guys that let her die, then one of the guy's sons, Thomas, and his friend and possible boyfriend, Kyle, find the game they're trapped in, Sarah kills Kyle, they all, fight, kind of, and Tom destroys the disc, and eventually Sarah lets go and passes on. And also there's, some entity called Atem? I don't really get it, I'm gonna be honest. I like the story, though. I like how it's not just the box standard Sonic is an evil demon meh. I will say, on the actual horror aspect of it, though, the series does feel kind of lacking. Some parts did kind of get me, like Kyle's death, but some of the other scares just didn't really do it for me. Overall, though, I'd say this series is really well made. I mean, this is literally just Sonic, bro. What do you want me to say? Man, I'm really struggling to find scary Sonic.exes and creepypastas. Man, it's just so hard. I can't find anything. I should go on YouTube and look it up. Maybe it'll help me. Oh, what's this? Scariest Sonic creepypasta? Well, I ought to watch this. Now, I do not want to sound like one of those anti-media literacy, sometimes the curtains are just blue people. Because I do think, even in things that are very simple, you can find deeper meaning. But even taking in that possible deeper meaning, this is the most overglazed shit I have ever seen. And listen, he is absolutely allowed to like what he likes. I'm not saying he shouldn't enjoy the story. I'm not even saying it's necessarily bad. But I think scariest creepypasta is a very high bar to clear. This just doesn't do it. A potential deeper meaning is not enough to carry it to the scariest mark. It has to be actually scary, and it's just not. And in this video, he mentions a remake that does something very similar to it, and is also just scarier naturally, and he's like, oh, I prefer this one. And while he's glazing this, he has the audacity to take digs at Sonic.exe.
What is this trifling hoe talking about?
And then he keeps showing drawings he made of this monster. Bro, he trying to gas it up. There's a lot to make fun of Pappo for, but honestly, I just wanted to bring this up because I thought it was really funny. I've never really been good at end cards. I don't really have any kind of like big lesson or like message to top this all off with. Just, I love fan horror, and I really appreciate what everyone's done for the genre, and I'd also really like to keep making videos like this. This video was originally about Pappo and Blackish, but when I started doing research for this video, I got distracted, and so here we are.